Hi and welcome back to the Yorkshire Garden School. In this video we're going to be potting on some seedlings which I sowed in my last video and which have grown large enough to transplant into slightly bigger modules so that they can grow on. These are wallflower seedlings which we sowed last time, and they've grown just big enough for me to move to slightly bigger modules so that they can grow on and get into bigger plants. So here we have one of the trays of wallflower seedlings that we sowed last time, the Erysimum, and as you can see they're fairly tall now, maybe a little bit too tall or etiolated as you say. They're sort of been reaching for the light a little bit because I had them on a windowsill and forgot to turn them a couple of times, but that's fine. They'll recover from that. And then next to them is this tray of foxglove seedlings that we sowed at the same time. So much smaller as you can see, but still perfectly fine and probably more or less ready to pot on. But for this video I'm going to concentrate on the wallflowers. I'm putting them into this tray. I've got little modules or plugs. I find that this is quite a nice size. They have fairly good amount of depth in them for root growth, and so these little seedlings will grow on quite well in there until they're then ready to be potted on again. And for this I'm using the same multi-purpose peat-free compost as we used to grow the seeds in the first place, mixed with a little bit of perlite. So last time we used vermiculite, which you can see on the surface of the seed tray there, and the vermiculite was there to hold in the moisture on the surface of the seed tray to make sure that the seedlings or the seeds didn't dry out. Perlite does a similar job in the sense that it does help with moisture retention, but it also helps with moisture drainage, which sounds counterintuitive. I tend to think about it as the perlite having the characteristic of grit, whereby the water will run past it, although some of it will be also absorbed, whereas the vermiculite really is a kind of sponge, and it will hold on to moisture and then release it slowly as the seeds need it, or the seedlings need it. So as I say, in order to encourage good drainage here, I'm mixing in this perlite. There's no sort of particular recipe about quantities or ratios or whatever, just well, stick a bit in and mix it in well. And you could use grit for this as well. You don't have to use it, but I just think for these very small young seedlings, it's very easy for them to rot off if they get too wet, so I'm just taking that precaution. And what I'm doing is just half filling these modules. I've already done the first couple because I want to be able to fit in the actual seedlings before I then fill them up to the top. Now there's any number of implements you can buy or think of to use. I happen to have a purpose-made kind of little tool for doing this job of pricking out, as we call it, but you can use a pencil, you can use the nice pointy bit of your seed label, you can use a fork from the kitchen drawer, whatever works. But what we want to do here is essentially lever out the little seedling with a little bit of compost if you can, so that the roots then stay fairly undisturbed, and move it over to its new home, which I'll pop it in that one there. Now the key thing that you'll hear about when you're transplanting seedlings is to always be careful to hold them either as I just did with a little lump of compost around the roots, or to handle them by the leaves, and never to actually handle them by the stem. It's pretty obvious when you think about it that the stem is very easily damaged or bruised or broken, whereas the plant can, if necessary, grow new leaves and it can grow new roots. So if you're going to handle it, then leaves or roots which can be regrown, not the stem, which is irreplaceable. So now I'm just going to take that by the leaves, as I said, and gently put a little bit of compost around the plant. So I'm keeping that plant in the center of the module, upright, and I'm gently firming in the compost around it. And then I'll take another one. Might add a tiny bit more compost around that and do the next one. And when I firm it, I'm careful not to really pack it down. We've talked before about how air is an important ingredient in compost. At the end, I'll give the whole tray a little bit of a shake just to settle it, and I'll top up any gaps that appear. Now this one that I'm handling here, I'm not sure if it's going to come away really from its little plug of compost, so I'm just going to handle it like that, pushing it in gently at the roots, firming it in and piling in the compost around it. It's quite a fiddly operation. You've got to be quite patient and quite delicate with it. I should have explained that I had already done some of these a couple of days ago, and at the time that I did them, I buried them fairly deep, just as I have done these ones. So these have already grown up and away from the point that I planted them at. But again, with the ones that I'm doing now, a few days later, I'm putting them in fairly deep, burying the stems a little bit, because otherwise they really just will be too leggy. So if we give that a little shake now, you'll see the compost settling. And I'm actually also going to add a bit of compost to these ones where it's settled even further as time has gone on, and bury them a little bit deeper. And now I'll just pot on all the others quickly. So there you have the full tray sown, and I'm going to put my label into what will be the top left hand corner. By doing what I know now is that everything in the subsequent rows is a wallflower, and then if I wanted to use these spaces for a different kind of plant, because I've run out of wallflowers now, I would put my next label in at this point, and then I would go up from there and back down that row, knowing that all those plants were the same. So that's quite a good method of labeling a seed tray. And what I'm going to do with this is put it in a water bath, in other words put it in a tray full of water and allow it to soak up water until I can see that the top is more or less damp, and then I'm going to leave it in the greenhouse and just let these seedlings grow on, keeping them watered, allowing them to have light but a bit of shelter from the elements, and we'll come back and visit them when they've got a bit bigger. Thanks very much for watching. Do subscribe if you're finding these videos useful, and you'll be given an automatic alert when the next video comes out.